Whenever we in modern society look back at history, it can be super difficult to see things as they really were. It's like gazing at the stars through a dirty telescope. Before we go any further, I'd like to tell you a story that sheds a little light on the particular bias we as Americans, especially Christians, might have in regard to our own history. Her name was Mary Dyer. She lived in the Massachusetts colony in the 1600s, a little more than 100 years before the colonies would become the United States. At the time, Massachusetts was predominantly Puritan. In fact, the colony was essentially created by Puritans. You see, back in England, the Puritans wanted to reform the Anglican Church from within without separating from it. But King Charles II of England wasn't having it. He turned up the pressure and the persecution on the Puritans, and so they left England by the thousands, seeking religious freedom in the New World. Mary and her husband William were a part of this massive immigration. Many of us modern-day Christian Americans have this rose-colored view of the colony's religious practices. Having left the old world in search of religious freedom, they established new systems of government that were tolerant, diverse, and respected the theological differences within the various streams of Christianity. And while this was certainly true in many cases, sometimes it wasn't. After Mary and her husband suffered a personal tragedy, Mary returned to England for a while. And there, she converted to Quakerism before eventually returning to the strictly Puritan Massachusetts. And although Quakers and Puritans share the common ground of being part of the Protestant Christian faith, they weren't so friendly towards each other. Massachusetts had established laws against practicing Quakers. They demanded religious conformity. So when Mary returned to the colony, she was immediately thrown into prison and banished from the colony. When two of her fellow Quaker lawbreaker friends were hanged in 1658, Mary returned, standing behind them as they faced their death. Dyer knew the consequences could be severe, but she was willing to stand for her cause of religious freedom. And she said,
I came in obedience to the will of God, desiring you repeal your unrighteous laws. And that is my work now and earnest request.
Ultimately, Mary suffered the same fate. On the morning she was ushered to the gallows, a troop of drummers in front and behind played loudly so that no one in the gathered crowd could hear another word of her preaching. Mary Dyer was willing to die for her strong religious convictions, leaving behind her husband and 8 children. She paid the ultimate price. Today, a bronze statue of Mary stands in her memory on the grounds of the State House in Boston in honor of her memory and in the hopes that this type of persecution never happens again. So why do I tell Mary's story? As I said, it highlights a common misconception that the colonies would eventually become the United States always enjoyed religious freedom. But sadly, many of the people who fled persecution from the old world of Europe were guilty of creating new forms of persecution in the new world of North America. Mary's story is one example of the colony's desperate need for revival. Not for religious conformity, mind you, but for a truly God-awakened, Jesus Christ-centered revival of the First and Second Great Awakening.